Hello, everyone. Welcome to Avaya's Overcoming Narcissistic Abuse curriculum. I'm Andy Anderson. My partner, Ike Allen, and I are teachers, mentors, and the co-owners of Avaya University. Avaya is the creator of over 1,000 books, films, courses, teachings, and other supportive resources. Thank you so much for being here. And our fellow teacher today, Bethany Dotson, is here to talk with you about 4 common myths of healing narcissistic abuse. Bethany is a relationship coach, yoga therapist, and abuse survivor with over a decade of collective experience in mindfulness, trauma recovery, and relationship psychology. She has helped hundreds of clients and students overcome CPTSD, trauma, reduce things like anxiety, depression, and body-related shame so that they can fall in love with themselves, feel empowered, communicate effectively, and co-create healthy relationships. So thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. My pleasure. So let's dive right into this topic. So let's talk about how is it, I know in your work you talk about how sometimes educating yourself on this topic of narcissism can actually work against you. So what do you mean by that?
So I find that I think it's a good thing to educate yourself on the signs of a narcissistic partner and the symptoms and if your relationship could be toxic. But what I found to be true is that many people actually overeducate themselves, and instead of using that to gain, just sheer awareness into their situation, I found that narcissistic relationships are actually very addictive, just due to the intermittent reinforcement and the highs and the lows. And I find that people use a lot of blog research, YouTube videos, Quora, forums, all kinds of things as a substitute for that fix that they're seeking unknowingly or subconsciously from their narcissistic partner or their narcissistic ex. I find that people use all things narcissism, all things cluster B personality disorder as a way of kind of affirming or keeping that drama going on in their head, keeping those same neural pathways firing, keeping themselves in a kind of heightened state of fight or flight or anxiety, and just kind of reliving the situation in their head and in their mind and in their body because they've been addicted to that cycle, whether they're aware of it or not, for however many months or years. And so when they leave or they're thinking about leaving, I see a lot of people just drowning themselves in anything that they can get their hands on. And then, along with that, I find that, some people are so educated and know so much about that then they might misperceive a situation as being narcissistic when in reality it may not be, because that's the lens that they've been viewing life through for so long. Or they allow that they're always on guard, they're always hypervigilant due to the experience that they had that, the moment that a third date doesn't contact them, he's automatically a narcissist. Mm-hmm. So I feel like it can be quite addictive, educating yourself mm-hmm. on narcissistic abuse and all that kind of stuff. And then the biggest downfall I see with it is that it displaces the focus off of oneself and onto someone else. Mm-hmm. And it keeps a lot of people from doing the difficult but courageous work of going, turning the mirror back at themselves and going, what is it about me that keeps attracting this dynamic again and again? Where when I see people, and I talk to potential clients who come to me and they know everything about what the difference between borderline and narcissism and, all manipulation and gaslighting techniques. And yet, they've been in an unhealthy relationship pattern for 30 or 40 years. And it's because I feel like that can keep people looking at, he did this to me, he's a narcissist, he checks all the boxes. and that keeps them from looking within.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's probably like the biggest tragedy I see with, and there's so many narcissistic blogs and narcissistic abuse recovery experts out there. And I follow some of these people, and I think it's good to educate people, but at the same time, I feel like in certain ways that just, that keeps people stuck on that cycle, right? Without ever giving them proper tools for breaking it. You don't need to read a narcissistic blog every night or there's only so much that you can do before it's really time to turn inward and look at why you are attracting that dynamic to begin with.
That was beautiful. That was a beautiful answer. Yeah. So key to absolutely take it back to personal responsibility. And it doesn't mean, it's not like about blaming, because there's certainly, I had my share of unhealthy relationships, and I'm like, why am I dating my father? Why am I dating my father? Right? Like, what is it about this person, the next alcoholic over and over again? Right? Like, but it's just getting that we all do that as humans. We all attract these things that we haven't, like, I think, worked through, but being aware of it and not, getting wrapped up in just pointing fingers outside of us, no matter what horrific, and I'm not saying there aren't horrible things that happen, because there absolutely are. And just, what can we do to improve ourselves so that we stop, right? So what can we do, right, to stop that cycle?
Yeah. So I feel like, in order to, and I might be out of order on my questions here, but I feel like one of the biggest things that we can do to break the cycle is really seeking the right support and the right type of help and the right type of treatment. I have found, and just from personal experience myself dealing with this pattern, and then from working with clients, I found that talk therapy is great. People go and they feel validated, they feel heard. But what from personal experience, I found that I was in talk therapy for 10 years, and yet I still continue to attract the same type of person over and over and over again. And I found, just from my work in trauma recovery, that, and in my work as a yoga therapist, that the emotional imprint of a heightened experience, whether that's in an abusive relationship or whether that's rejection or abandonment or, an unhealthy relationship cycle, is not stored just in your mind. And it's definitely not stored in your prefrontal cortex, which is where cognitive behavioral therapy tends to focus, right? We're kind of talking about the experience or rehashing the past. But I feel like those memories and those experiences are also stored in your body. And a few years ago, I did a workshop with Bessel van der Kolk, who is a great teacher and researcher. And the one thing that he said that kind of stunned the crowd was that talk therapy was a waste of time when it came to recovering from trauma. And that there were only a few proven methods that he had found over his 20, 30 years of research that actually helped people overcome trauma. And one of those was EMDR. So I recommend clients a lot. If they're not quite ready to work with me, I recommend them first seek out EMDR. Any kind of mind-body practice that helps to create awareness, interoceptive awareness within themselves. So I feel like talk therapy can be great, but what I found is that people will replay the story again of he did this, this is what happened, this is what happened, this is what happened. And when people, and again, this isn't to be victim blaming at all, but when people replay a story and they receive sympathy or they receive validation, they're getting an emotional payoff from that experience, but they're not getting the deeper work or the deeper inquiry, the difficult inquiry of why is this happening? Why does this keep happening to me? And yet further actual steps on how to break it, actual steps on how to break it. And I see a lot of people coming to me and they're like, I've been in therapy for 15 years and I attracted somebody and he's the worst of them all. It's like the worst version yet. And I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I don't know why I keep doing this. And it's because, you know, a lot of times they're going to therapy and they're talking about, you know, the crazy week that they had. They're talking about what their ex is doing to them. And I'm not knocking the therapeutic process. I think it's great, but they're never really getting the tools and the skills that they need in order to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah, and I've heard that as well in the world of trauma, as it relates to talk therapy not being enough to tackle, right, that deeply ingrained experience in your body that that so many other things are better at working through.
Yeah.
So what about, like, let's say, you know, I know in your work you also talk about people having broken up. So let's say people watching right now are in the middle of a breakup or they're going to break up. And I think most of us in any breakup could probably relate to that, like advice from a friend or from somebody about keep busy. You know, I know you're going through a lot, so just stay busy, like maybe do some new things, take up new hobbies, those kinds of things. Like, what are your thoughts on that, or any other suggestions around like what people should do after they've ended a relationship with a narcissist?
Well, I feel like people should give themselves some time to be still. And this is just coming from someone with, you know, heavy yoga and meditation background. But what I found to be true in my experience is that many people, and again, from personal experience and the clients that I've worked with, many people who come into this type of relationship dynamic often have childhood trauma. And what I found is when people have that type of an unhealthy background, there can be a strong tendency to be an overachiever, to be a high achiever, to be a worker, to be a doer, to kind of overwork and pile things on their plates and never feel like they're getting ahead. And I feel like that's kind of an overcompensating tactic to kind of fill up the lack of feeling not enough, or the feeling of unworthiness. And so I find that people, when they're on the edge of feeling heartbreak, when they're you know, feeling despair, when they're feeling down, when they're in this like big trigger of rejection or abandonment that goes way back to, you know, 4 or 5 years old, that there's a strong tendency to get the hell away from that as soon as possible and to do whatever they can to take their mind off of it. And that's just a natural human response. As human beings, we're like hardwired to go for pleasure and then avoid pain. And that's like the very foundation of ignoring all the red flags. We're like, you know, we got love bombed and swept off our feet, and then there's like one kind of thing that doesn't add up, and we're like, oh no, I don't want to deal with that. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing on a grander scale after a breakup from a toxic relationship. There are all of these, and you know, I feel like a breakup from a toxic relationship is quite different from just a normal breakup where you kind of grew apart, and for the most part it was healthy. You had a few arguments here and there, but when it's a roller coaster, on again, off again, gaslighting, highly emotionally abusive relationship, those breakups are devastating and can level someone. And I think there's, you know, if someone already has that programming of I'm going to fix people, I'm going to overdo it, I'm going to like, you know, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to be successful so nobody sees that I'm unworthy or I'm unlovable, there can be a strong tendency to avoid doing that inner work by staying busy. And I see a lot of women, unfortunately, taking up hobbies, going to the gym. I think it's great to go to the gym. Like, you know, exercise is wonderful for your mental health. You know, switching careers, going on retreats across the globe, like taking solo trips, you know, kind of getting out of their comfort zone. But at the same time, they're not fully addressing the deeper work within that subconscious programming the trauma that is still going on in here. They just kind of like, oh, I'm going to go over here and do some fun things and try to fill my time and take my mind off of it. So they tend to bypass the more important, courageous work by filling their plate, which is kind of, which has been the norm for their lives. And I was in another group recently, and someone said that there's a dynamic that happens energetically and on a frequency level that women who are, or men and too, who tend to be high achievers naturally seek people subconsciously who are a little bit more of an underachiever, somebody who might be stuck in their life, somebody who might be having some issues, and that tendency of wanting to fix and wanting to do and wanting to help and wanting to succeed, that kind of is a match energetically.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. No, very, very true. So, one other thing that comes to mind is, right, I think most people who have been in some kind of a narcissistic relationship could say, like, right, there's so many negatives about being in that relationship and the trauma and absolutely, like, all of the just like horrible things that one has experienced. But are there positive things that can come out of these relationships?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel that, ironically, these relationships can actually be the greatest wake-up call and the greatest gift. And that sounds crazy, but when we attract that type of a dynamic, a teacher once told me, life is going to come looking for you. No matter how hard you try, no matter how hard you try to control things, no matter how hard you try to run away from your unhealthy past, life inevitably will come looking for you and hand you exactly what you need in order to heal. And a toxic relationship, especially the worst one of them all, can be a huge wake-up call and a huge gift and an opportunity to go, hang on, why does this keep happening to me? Why do I keep feeling like I'm recreating my traumatic childhood in my adult relationship, right? And it's that opportunity to nurture and heal those original wounds, those core wounds that happened, that are subconsciously playing out, right? So, I see some people, they're aware that they have this pattern, but they don't see it as an opportunity. They instead see it as, life is unfair. I am defective. There's something wrong with me. It keeps happening. I must be broken. And they let it shut them down and close them off from connection. I talk to so many people who are exhausted. They're like, I can't do it anymore. Relationships, no, are not for me. I just can't risk. It's too terrifying. And it's a shame, because I believe that you can't heal unless you're in a relationship. There's a lot of work that you can do on your own, right? You can work on the relationship within yourself. But again, from personal experience and from my clients' experience, it's only when you get into a relationship with another human being that all of that work is put to the test, that you come face to face with all of your triggers, all of your insecurities, all your fear, all your vulnerability, and to shut yourself off from that opportunity, even though it's scary and it's risky, and rightfully so. If you've been through the ringer and every relationship has been a disaster, that type of connection is really kind of like the last little piece to get you over the hump to fully break your cycle. So I feel like when people shut themselves off from connection, they rob themselves of that opportunity to heal. They stay stuck, right? And I talk to a lot of people that go years without dating, like 5 or 10 years. And then they think they're ready, and they venture out there, and lo and behold, it happens again. So it's like time doesn't matter, right? It stretches beyond time. And I think it's only when when people can shift their perspective in a gentle way and ask, how is this serving me? How can I become the greatest version of myself because of this, right? What is my purpose? Yeah. That it becomes a gift, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I like one thing that we were chatting about before we started this interview today is just really casting a vision for everyone watching right now, that no matter how many relationships you've had that have been horrible or whatever, there's always like the possibility is out there for you absolutely to have a healthy relationship. And that's just like, I guess that would be something also to talk about, is like for those people who have given up or whatever, like, what do you recommend for them to really be able to do that work on themselves and learn to trust people and be vulnerable? Like any like strategies you could share about that?
Yeah, I think the first thing is learning to, is getting into a group or getting into some kind of healing relationship with a coach or a therapist or a mentor, some kind of, potentially therapeutic group, and learning to communicate and be vulnerable and speak about your needs and speak about your past. I think, a lot of people, I find, they carry a lot of shame from the past. And I talk to people who are afraid to date because they don't want to tell a potential new partner that they've had, 5 crazy ex-boyfriends or whatever. Or they secretly think that an emotionally mature, responsible partner with their act together that's high quality and high caliber would not want anything to do with them. And that's because they seem to move through life with like a secret, or they feel ashamed of their past. And so I think the first step is to get into some kind of healing relationship with someone that you resonate with. I talk to people who go to therapy and they tell me, I don't really like my therapist. And I'm like, well, it's not going to work then. You have to really have a good, strong connection and trust with the person that you're working with. And the second thing is to open to connection with other people, not necessarily romantic at first, but open yourself to making new friends. Open yourself to kind of getting out of your comfort zone. I talk to people who kind of, after a bad relationship, they're like, home, work, gym, grocery store. That's it. Netflix, nothing. No, I don't want to deal with anybody. And, I think the second thing is to get out of your comfort zone, as scary as that might feel, and not only create new connections, but initiate new connections. I find that connection with human beings is vital for who we are. Like, we need it to survive. We need to be hugged. We need to be touched a certain number of times a day, right? So I think getting into connection with new people, and then eventually learning to date again, but in a way that is safe, and with tools and techniques that are safe, with learning how to kind of put all of the work that you've done to the test, and not assign such a big meaning to dating. I think there are a lot of people that, especially for people who have codependent traits or codependent tendencies, there's a tendency of moving really fast in a relationship, and they meet somebody and there's fireworks and chemistry, and oh my gosh, they're an instant couple, and then it's like a disaster for the next year and a half. Right. So I think kind of reframing the approach to dating as I'm just in the experience, I'm present, I'm in the moment, and learning how to bring in that mindfulness piece of learning to stay present, especially when there are triggers or red flags or things that remind you of an ex, and just learning to ride that emotional wave rather than ignoring a red flag or immediately labeling the person a narcissist, or, no, it's too much, I can't do it. The only way out of fear is through it, right? And so I think when people can open themselves to the possibility of dating and connection in a fun way, in a lighthearted way, and being present and in the moment, then we kind of take off all the heavy, serious meanings around it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Like one of the meanings that I would, just going back into my dating years long ago, right? I'd be like, is this going anywhere? Right? Like the thought that's like always present for probably a lot of people, right? Is this going to be the one or the next one or the whatever, right? Is this going anywhere? Yeah. As opposed to just being in the moment and enjoying whatever that experience is at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Being present with it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thank you. I love it. This has been awesome. I appreciate all these amazing answers to questions and all of your work. So I do want to let you get a chance to talk about your gift. So there's a free gift from Bethany and a button below that you can click on, everyone watching, to head over to Bethany's website. So could you tell us about what that is?
Yes. So it's a free masterclass. It's about 45-ish minutes. And I talk about the 5 shifts or the 5 steps you need to take in order to break and end your pattern of unhealthy relationships. The five key shifts you need to start making in your life to undo codependency, to undo trying to fix people, to undo attracting people that you want to help and want to rescue and want to make better. So it's the 5 shifts to break your cycle of bad relationships.
That is so perfect for what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Thank you. And everyone, again, that button's right below. So you just click through it and head over and get that webinar. So any last insights, anything else that you want to share before we wrap up?
I would just say that, kind of to touch on what you said earlier, healthy love and connection is possible. It is possible. It is out there. And it's just a matter of shifting internal things. It's not about how many dating apps you get on. It's not about how many dates you go on per week. It really has nothing to do with that. Once you are able to shift your mindset, shift your energy, shift your frequency, heal all the trauma that's subconsciously driving you into those situations to begin with, it's mind-blowing the things that can happen. You open yourself up to opportunity. So I would just encourage anybody out there that's going, it's not possible for me. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. Perfect ending. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you everyone for showing up for yourself, for being present with Bethany and me today, and for, being willing to go on this journey of learning about yourself and relationships. And we'll see you again real soon. Take care.